Gather around today. We will tell you a story. This is no ordinary tale. This story has been carefully weaved with the moments of extraordinary passion, courage, and inspiration. Its crevices are rich with camaraderie of one firm and echoes of our founding fathers. Let me tell you the KPMG story. It talks about the business we are in, why we do what we do, and what we believe in. It tells our people, our clients, and our communities what we are really about, and defines how we want the world to see us. It keeps our brothers and purpose at the heart of our commitment and threads our culture around our values.
A very good morning to all of you. On behalf of KPMG, let me welcome you all to the 8th edition of ENRich, KPMG India's annual energy conclave. The theme of the conclave is changing Indian energy landscape, adapting to a new reality and normal. To take over the proceedings of the session, let me invite my colleague Manish Agarwal on stage. And Manish leads M&A and debt advisory practice for the infrastructure sectors and is also head of ENR for KPMG in India. Manish.
Thanks, Vikas. Shri Dharmendra Pradhan ji, Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, Minister of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and very warm welcome to ENRich. This is our 8th edition of ENRich, which is our energy conclave. I am Manish Agarwal, partner with KPMG India. Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji recently said, and I quote, "Key driver of economic growth, sustainable, stable and reasonably priced energy is essential for the fruits of economic development to reach the bottom of the pyramid," unquote. And I think that is what we see the way energy sector is going through a both transformation and a disruption probably at the same time, which looks very confusing, but that's a reality. And that's what probably the way forward is guided by this vision. I have no hesitation in saying that Honorable Minister Shri Dharmendra Pradhan ji has furthered India's energy agenda with our vision in sight. Major policy initiatives have been announced over the last few years to increase investments in the upstream sector, to increase our domestic production, and to finally lead to what we call as a gas-based economy. Hydrocarbon exploration and licensing policy, discovered oil field policy which were announced, which is such a unique break from the past regimes and the licensing part, both from a fiscal and an administrative point of view as well. One national grid is in the offing, and a comprehensive national biofuel policy, which were announced very recently, is some of the initiatives that are worth noting. And I had a chance to interact while this biofuel policy during some of the sessions, and minister's guidance to everybody was that look at farmer and the rural economy as a core, work out a structure which ultimately benefits industry, but you should really think as to how the farmers benefit out of this entire thing. And that, to my mind, echoes the various schemes, the reforms that you see across sectors within this government. What Ujjwala and Pahel achieved, I don't think, we could have even thought through some of these schemes, forget about the execution which was done over the last 2-3 years, which has made a very perceptible, visible difference to somebody who actually needs some of these initiatives. As I said, Indian energy sector is going through both transformation and a disruption. Essentially 3 or 4 key things that we see. The demand patterns are shifting. There is a great push towards the green and the clean energy. There is clearly a convergence between energy and the transport, and the way the entire mobility will be looking like in the future is going to change. At the same hand, there's a lot of competitive intensity in the pricing part. While it is good to say that the tariffs are the lowest, but we need to think what are the reasonable returns that the investors are making, and is that sustainable for the sector? So it is debatable. The consumer become a center to this entire transition, and the utility of the future needs to respond to the needs, which is going to be again very different, and the preferences which are going to be different. And lastly, the entire digital transformation. I'm just saying about the key things that come to my mind. And technology is an architecture which is overlaying everything because it is an enabler as a disruptor as well at the same point in time. So in summary, decentralization, decarbonization, and digitalization are the three trends which are reshaping the entire sector. India has a commitment to COP21. We have committed to reduce the intensity emission norms about 35%, and the share of a non-fossil fuel energy by 40% by 2030. The government is strongly saying electric vehicles we will have 100% by 2030, which is again debatable. We need to really think that what requires, it is good to have those intent, but we need to also see that what is required to place that enabling infrastructure, and the transition should be panned out in such a way that it is as less disruptive to the sector as possible. So what does it mean? And we will talk about that during various sessions. I think we have thoughtfully carved out the various 5 sessions of the day, which will be revolving around this. But essentially what we are saying is that if this transition and the disruption has to be planned in a much less painful manner, then I think there is need for an enabling policy framework and a regulatory framework. The sector need to be reorganized and changed. There has to be a preparedness by all the stakeholders because some of these disruptions have not been witnessed earlier, and some will be real disruptions going forward. ENRich is one such step towards evolving that roadmap of transition. Over the years, ENRich has established itself as a platform where all the participants, stakeholders like yourself, comes and deliberate. And Honorable Minister was mentioning that in the morning to us that we should try to converge the interactions into a paper which can actually be shared and the government can act on a constructive feedback that comes out of this session. We have a full packed day for the day. 5 sessions, very engaging conversations, very eminent speakers, and I can assure you that you will find the deliberations very meaningful. I once again welcome you all to this energy conclave. In line with our tradition, I will invite Honorable Minister, Arun, our Chairman and CEO, Akhil, our Deputy CEO, and Mrityunjay, Head of Markets, to start the day proceedings with lighting of lamp, please. Thank you, everyone. I will now invite Arun, our Chairman and CEO, for his address.
Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you, Manish, for the introduction. A very warm welcome to all of you. Distinguished guests, friends, on behalf of my partners and colleagues of KPMG India, I'm delighted to welcome you to the 8th edition of ENRich, KPMG India's annual energy conclave. The term ENRich, as you can see, is a clever takeoff on energy and natural resources, ENR, and the conference aims to be a source of rich knowledge and conversation on the topic. I'm proud to note that ENRich has become a well-respected event in the energy space in India. Today, we are honored to have Shri Dharmendra Pradhan, Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, and Minister for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship amongst us. A very warm welcome to you, Honorable Minister. Your presence here speaks to the importance that you assign to new ideas and knowledge in the way you approach your responsibilities. We're grateful for your participation and thank you very much for the very candid and thoughtful observations you made to us, the suggestions that you made to us before this. KPMG, we recognize that infrastructure is paramount to India's growth and development, and we can look at it as having three critical components: energy, transportation, and urbanization. We are engaged in a number of projects across the country and indeed around the world, working with governments and the private sector in each of these three areas. Energy is the most critical of the three because we cannot have aviation, railways, or road transportation without plentiful energy, and our cities are dependent on energy for their functioning. India currently consumes only 6% of the world's primary energy, and we still have people without access to electricity. The government is keenly focused on these challenges, and we have seen major progress over the last 3 years. For example, there's been a record increase in power generation with over 75 gigawatts of thermal capacity added. Renewables came into the grid at an backed by government policy and a supporting environment. Today, clean and sustainable energy dominates the energy in India. The government intends to reduce dependence on imports of hydrocarbons by 10%. The ministry is working to create a gas-based economy and introducing and encouraging biofuels in the system as well. The government of India's focus on attaining power for all, driven by policies that promote competitive intensity across the value chain, will lead both to the social good of universal good of increased productivity. Of course, the increase in power generation and the lower tariffs have not come without problems. Much thermal capacity is under stress, stretching players' balance sheets as well as the banking system. While there have been advances that are impressive in power generation, today we need to see a corresponding transformation in distribution. Along these lines, we have seen distribution reforms in UDAY, the Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Looking forward, the energy sector will see significant changes globally, and India will be no exception. With the advent of digitization, decarbonization, and customer focus, the utilities of tomorrow are bound to be very different from those we know today. India, as a proud signatory to the Conference of Parties, the COP21, is committed to decarbonization and thus to a growing role for low-carbon sources of energy led by solar and wind power. The government is committed to produce 40% of power from non-fossil sources by 2030. Natural gas is a good fit for decarbonizing India's energy system. In parallel, the government has indicated plans to supplement conventional vehicles with electric vehicles in the near future, which is expected to have significant implications on energy forms are converging to create game-changing disruptions. With digital disruption underway, technologies such as the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and blockchain are increasingly finding application across key areas on the grid as well as beyond it. Digitization has been a dominant policy narrative, with several key interventions being introduced across sectors. However, digitization in the energy sector is still at a nascent stage. Hence, there is a need for creating an enabling regulatory and policy framework to shape the future use of digitization in India's energy sector. In the years to come, the customer will take the center stage of the energy system, seeking low-carbon choices, always-on connections, higher transparency, and opportunities for learning. The evolution to smarter, more decentralized, yet more connected electricity systems could increase reliability, security, environmental sustainability, asset utilization, and open new opportunities for services and business. The Indian power sector has an investment potential of 15 trillion rupees or $225 billion in the next 4 to 5 years in power generation, distribution, transmission, and equipment. With that backdrop, let me share some views that we have developed at KPMG. While we are moving forward, critical policy and government initiatives are still needed to make the journey successful and less challenging to the sector as a whole. A vision for the future will need to comprehend the changing paradigms caused by high renewable generation, the emergence of grids, to name just two. Such a vision must embrace comprehensive planning, sector reorganization, policies and regulations, as well as preparedness. Utilities will need to be more flexible and agile in planning and operations, responding to customer behavior, ecosystem, and technology trends. We believe that structural changes such as carriage and content segregation leading to competition in retail supply of electricity will need to be actively evaluated. We expect that these and several other considerations are being envisaged under the Electricity Amendment Bill. Renewable energy may not only put pressure on the viability of new generation capacity, but may also marginalize the operations of old plants. As the pattern of usage changes, a fresh look may have to be taken at evaluating alternative contract structures to ensure a win-win situation for both buyers and investors. Other critical decisions will be around retirement of old assets, for example, getting costly diesel generation-based capacity retired out of the system. This will also be an area of focus, given the shift towards renewable energy and transition to areas such as integrated energy usage. In order to increase the share of gas in the country's energy basket to 15% from the current level of 6.5%, transparency and competitiveness will be key. Innovative models to connect rural loads will be required. As technology adoption increases, it is of utmost importance to understand the risk of cyber exposure, as the number of digital transactions and processes will increase significantly. Concepts of cyber governance and customer privacy will need to be embedded in the core organizational processes. Needless to say, this will also demand adequate skilling and continuous awareness. The energy landscape of the future comes with challenges and rewards, but most of all, the rewards of energy access for all Indians and increased productivity in the economy. Our energy conclave today intends to discuss this and more. Before I close, I want to thank the KPMG markets team who worked very, very hard, working with Manish Agarwal to put together this very rich event. Once again, thank you all for being with us.
Thanks, Arun. A very well laid out perspective, and I'm sure that as we deliberate over the day, these subjects that you mentioned about, we will factor that in and converge into a note which Honorable Minister is actually very keen to look at to get all the feedback what emerges out of the day. I will now invite Akhil Bansal, our Deputy CEO, KPMG India, to welcome the Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Manish. Ladies and gentlemen, very good morning and a very warm welcome to this KPMG Energy Conclave ENRich. Over the years, and this is the 8th edition, over the years I've seen the interest, participation and support we have got from you, and this is overwhelming, and that gives us encouragement to organize this event year over year, again and again. And I'm sure this year event will be no exception. We'll be encouraged by your participation to do it again next year. As far as energy is concerned, India is putting its emphasis on diversifying its crude oil supply sources and tapping new sources of power. And as Arun was alluding to it, no country in the world can become economic superpower till there is a self-reliance as far as energy is concerned. So with India's ambition of becoming economic superpower, energy and self-reliance will continue to be a critical subject for time to come, at least for the near future. Maybe I'm stating the obvious, and I'm sure most of you would agree with me. In this coming decade, we'll probably see majority of new power generation capacity to be all renewable, at least clean energy, if not renewable. And that that would be based on more on cost competitiveness of renewables and the ability of grid to absorb large renewable energies. Universal access to electricity is one of the prime aims of the government, and there's a lot of focus to achieve that demand. With that political will and the efforts which have been put behind the energy sector in the country, India, I'm sure, is a way to become the energy capital of the world. Coupled with the fact that there is a lot of focus on climate change across the world, including the UN, it's a tremendous opportunity to put India into the front of all economies transitioning towards low cost. All gamut of opportunities for the country, but also every one of us in the room. And I'm sure that will also lead us to our objective for power for all as soon as possible. To take this discussion forward, I'm delighted, privileged to welcome Shri Dharmendra Pradhan ji, Honorable Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, Minister of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. Shri Pradhan ji was appointed as Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister in May 2014 and hence since worked to advance government's agenda to transition a gas-based economy. Since taking office, Shri Pradhan ji has been working with the aim of betterment of masses, with a holistic focus on energy sector across area of exploration and production of oil and gas, their refining, distribution, marketing, import and export. Alongside, Shri Pradhan ji also encourages engagement with bodies like OPEC and other fellow nations to promote purposeful and improved dialogue among consumer and producer countries. Apart from this, his role with the government, he also been working on several social issues concerning the youth, such as unemployment, lack of skill-based education, rehabilitation of farmers, displaced persons, and other backward classes. He continues to play an important role in creating a positive image of politics amongst the youth so that they can be better leaders and work for betterment of our country. I continue working for a long time in the Indian political system for the betterment of our country. Sir, I would like to now invite you to share your thoughts with us, and I'm sure all guests here today are eagerly waiting to hear your views on the theme of this summit and how you see energy evolving in the years ahead. Over to you, sir.
एनरिच की 8th एडिशन में आप सभी का स्वागत है। मंच पे बैठे हुए केपीएमजी की भारत के प्रमुख आदरणीय अरुण कुमार जी, आल्बर्ट मार्टिनो जी, अखिल बंसल जी, मृत्युंजय कपूर, मेरे मित्र मनीष अग्रवाल और यहां उपस्थित सारे भाई और बहनों। केपीएमजी बिग 4 के अंदर एक है और भारत की पब्लिक पॉलिसी में एनर्जी हो, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो या स्किल गैप के असेसमेंट हो, आप कहां नहीं हो, आप सब जगह पे हो। आपकी सलाह से, आपकी वेल थॉट रिसर्च से सरकार को गवर्नेंस में मदद मिलती है। सरकार खुद को दुनिया की सारे डेवलपमेंट इनिशिएटिव और इनोवेशन के साथ आपके माध्यम से जुड़ने का एक आप निरंतर प्रयास है। एनर्जी जैसे की सेक्टर में निरंतर आपकी एक एनरिचमेंट, सबको एक नया दिशा से जोड़ने की ये प्रयास है। मैं आपकी इस 8th एडिशन में आप सभी का स्वागत करता हूं। आप दिन भर बैठ के भारत की एनर्जी सिचुएशन को समीक्षा करेंगे, विश्व में क्या होने वाला है, क्या हो रहा है, उसके ऊपर आप चर्चा करेंगे और आने वाले दिनों के लिए विश्व के अंदर एक बहुत बड़ा जो इमर्जिंग मार्केट है, इंडियन इकोनॉमी, इंडियन सिस्टम, उसके लिए आपकी सलाह कम से कम मेरे जैसे विभाग में तो उसको हम काम पे लाने के लिए हमको मदद होगी। मैं आपको पुनः इस वर्कशॉप में स्वागत करता हूं। मित्रों, मैं पहले भी आपसे जुड़ा हूं। मेरे 2-3 ऑब्जर्वेशन है। आज की आपने मेरे से अपेक्षा रखा कि मैं कुछ प्रारंभिक विषय रखूं आपके सामने, जिसमें आपको आगे की चर्चा आपके विषय के साथ साथ आज की आवश्यकता को पूरा करेगी। मित्रों, जब दूसरी औद्योगिक क्रांति हुई, सेकेंड इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन 19th सेंचुरी में हुआ, तब बिजली की उत्पादन हुई थी। एनर्जी तो पहले इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन में भी आई थी। पहला इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन की एक प्राइमरी फाइंडिंग स्टीम था, स्टीम इंजन था। स्टीम इंजन के पीछे भी एनर्जी था। रिसेंट पास्ट की जो इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन हुई है पिछले 2-3 सेंचुरी में, तब भी एनर्जी फैक्टर था। और आज हम जब एनरिच 8th में इकट्ठा हो रहे हैं, तब भी हम चर्चा कर रहे हैं कि डिजिटलाइजेशन ऑफ एनर्जी नॉलेज, एनर्जी इकोनॉमिक्स, एनर्जी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन इज द वे फॉरवर्ड। ये सही है। मित्रों, सारे एनर्जी की कारोबार आखिर किसके लिए होनी चाहिए? क्या ये सिर्फ एक इकोनॉमिक ऑब्जेक्ट है? क्या सिर्फ एक टेक्नो इकोनॉमिक विषय है? क्या ये एक एकेडमिक डिस्कशन है? मित्रों, जब अरुण जी ने कहा कि देश में भारत दुनिया की प्राइमरी एनर्जी की सिर्फ 6% कंजम्पशन करती है, और आने वाले विश्व की सारे रिपोर्ट ने यह विषय कहा है, आने वाले 25 साल में विश्व की इंक्रीमेंटल ग्रोथ की 20% होगी। आज भी हमारी पर कैपिटा एनर्जी कंजम्पशन वन अमंग द लोएस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड एवरेज है, जो आने वाले 15, 20, 25 साल में तेजी से बढ़ने वाला है। भारत में एनर्जी मल्टी डायमेंशनल है। साइंस है, मिनिस्टर पेट्रोलियम एंड नेचुरल गैस है। संडे को एक लेख आई थी भारत की टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया में। विश्व भारत के एक जाने माने लेखक, अर्थशास्त्री आदरणीय अंकलेश्वर आयर जी ने लिखा है। उन्होंने हमें कहा है, ये धर्मेंद्र प्रधान को चीज कम समझ में आती है। ये एक 60 मिलियन मेट्रिक टन की एक रिफाइनरी बनाना है, इसका होगा क्या होगा आगे? उस रिफाइनरी तो बैड डेप्ट में। अभी हमारे अग्रवाल मनीष कह रहा था, साहब ये हमारे पावर सेक्टर में जो सारे बैड एसेट है उसकी क्या होगा? अभी अंकलेश्वर आयर जी ने कहा है कि जो 60 मिलियन टन की रिफाइनरी की कल्पना की जाएगी, उसमें जो बैंक वाले लोन देंगे, ये कुछ दिनों के बाद बैड डेप्ट होने वाला है। ये एक सोच है, उसको हम अस्वीकार नहीं करते। उनकी कुछ जानकारी होगा, उनकी शायद केपीएमजी वालों ने उनको रिपोर्ट ठीक से नहीं पढ़ाया होगा, वो उनकी विषय है। उन्होंने कहा कि आने वाले दिनों में 2022 तक सारे डीजल इंजन बंद हो जाएगा, ऐसे रेलवे मिनिस्टर साहब ने कहा है। और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मिनिस्ट्री, रोड सेक्टर की मिनिस्टर, हम सबके नेता गडकरी जी एक विषय कह रहे हैं कि 2030 तक सारे गाड़ी हो जाएगा। शायद एनरिच की यही फाइंडिंग होनी चाहिए आपकी आज की डिलीवरेशन के बाद। आफ्टर ऑल, व्हाट आर द इमर्जिंग ट्रेंड, व्हाट इज द रियल रोड मैप फॉर इंडिया एटलीस्ट इन द नेक्स्ट 2-3 डिकेड्स? रिफाइनरी चलेगा, ईवी आ जाएगा, डीजल इंजन रेलवे से निकल जाएगी। जब अपने 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 वर्टिकल में हम आगे लेके, क्योंकि हमें लगता है कि भारत की पेट्रोकेमिकल पर कैपिटा कंजम्पशन 10 किलो है, विश्व की एवरेज 30 किलो है। भारत की सामान्य लोगों को, गरीबों को एक सम्मान की जिंदगी देने में, मैं पेट्रोलियम सेक्टर की इंचार्ज मंत्री के नाते हमें लगता है पेट्रोकेमिकल एक बहुत बड़ा कैटलिस्ट बन सकता है। कल अखबार में आई है, साबिक और अरामको ये दोनों मिलकर $20 बिलियन की एक का जॉइंट वेंचर बनाने वाले हैं पेट्रोकेमिकल में। हम तो ये नहीं कह सकते हैं कि वहां बैड डेप्ट में वो चले जाएंगे। साबिक और आरामको दुनिया की 2 बड़े हाइड्रोकार्बन कंपनियां हैं, उन्होंने कुछ सोच के बनाया होगा। और मैं भारत के मार्केट में तो ये देख पा रहा हूं, अगर पेट्रोकेमिकल कमोडिटी की कंजम्पशन बढ़ेगी, आज हम नेट इंपोर्टर है। पेट्रोकेमिकल रिक्वायरमेंट आज भी हमारी कम है, जितना हो रहा है उसको पूरा करने के लिए हम नेट इंपोर्टर है कि हम तो एक बड़ा मार्केट देख पा रहे हैं। ईवी की में क्या है? ईवी की में लिथियम बैटरी है। लिथियम बैटरी तो भारत में नहीं बनेगी, उसको भी तो इंपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा। मैं मानता हूं टेक्नोलॉजी इनोवेशन जिस तेजी से बढ़ रहा है, शायद लिथियम इयन बैटरी से आगे कुछ रास्ता निकल जाएगी और नए प्रकार की कुछ बैटरी भी शायद आ जाए, और हमें भी उसको स्वीकार करना चाहिए। टेक्नोलॉजी जितने जल्दी पिछले दिनों में आती थी, अभी और तेजी से आएगी, और भारत में तो और तेजी से आएगी। मित्रों, आज हमारे देश में भारत सरकार, विशेष करके प्रधानमंत्री जी एक विषय पर स्पष्ट है। हमने पहला इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन, दूसरी इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन, अगर दूसरी इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन में इलेक्ट्रिसिटी एनर्जी वाज ए फाइंडिंग, आज भी नवंबर में बैठे हैं। 2017 दिसंबर से 18,000 गांव सारे गांव में पहुंचेगी, पहली बार। आजादी के 70 साल के बाद भी भारत में हर एक गांव में बिजली नहीं पहुंची थी, जो 2017 में पूरा होगी। सितंबर महीने में हमने एक प्रोग्राम लॉन्च किया है कि भारत में 4 करोड़ 25 करोड़ घरों में से 4 करोड़ घर में अभी भी हाउस होल्ड नहीं है। कभी हम यहां बैठे हुए हॉल में कोई कल्पना कर सकता है? 4 करोड़ घरों में बिजली अभी भी नहीं है। भारत सरकार लगभग 16,000 करोड़ रुपया खर्चा करके प्रधानमंत्री सौभाग्य योजना 2018 दिसंबर तक पूरा करेगी। एनर्जी, हम मानते हैं कि एनर्जी ही बड़ा एनेबलर है विकास की, डेवलपमेंट की। तरक्की करना है, औद्योगिक क्रांति को और तेजी से ले जाना है, खेतों की उपज को प्रोसेसिंग करना है, उसको वैल्यू एडिशन करना है, उसको मार्केट की अप्रिशिएट करवाना है, मास ट्रांसपोर्टेशन सिस्टम को लोगों को अफोर्डेबल बनाना है, एजुकेशन को यूनिवर्सल कराना है, हेल्थ केयर मैकेनिज्म को यूनिवर्सल कराना है, एम्पावरमेंट कराना है, तो उसके पीछे एनर्जी ही होती है। मित्रों, भारत, इसलिए मैंने कहा कि एनर्जी चीज क्या है। एनर्जी एक सोशियो इकोनॉमिक ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन की द वीपन है। एक एनर्जी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर के नाते, पेट्रोलियम सेक्टर की इंचार्ज के नाते, और ओवरऑल एक मैं खुद को मानता हूं एनर्जी प्रैक्टिशनर, हमारी कमिटमेंट है भारत की 125 करोड़ देशवासियों को आने वाले 2-4 साल के अंदर हम अगर एनर्जी पहुंचाएंगे, ऊर्जा पहुंचाएंगे, उनको एक्सेसिबिलिटी देंगे एनर्जी को, उनकी अफोर्डेबिलिटी रहेगा, वो एनर्जी सिक्योर रहेगा और एनर्जी सस्टेनेबल रहेगा। हमने COP21 में कमिट करके आए हैं, हम विश्व की पोल्यूटेंट कंट्री नहीं है। उसके बाद भी हमने कहा है कि हम विश्व की अंदर एक नया मॉडल खड़ा करना चाहते हैं। हम COP21 के प्रति कमिटेड है और हम हमारी एनर्जी को क्लीन बनाएंगे। जब मित्रों, हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी ने ये कह के आया, ये हम लोगों के लिए एक कमिटमेंट बन गई। अभी अभी दिल्ली के अंदर हम सब रहते हैं, दिल्ली के बारे में खूब चर्चा हुई। जब ठंड होती है दिल्ली में क्राइसिस बढ़ती है, और दिल्ली के बारे में सब लोग चर्चा करते हैं, अखबार वाले ज्यादा चर्चा करते हैं, बाकी दिनों में भूल जाते हैं। मित्रों, हमने कहा कि हमने BS6 को 2 साल प्रीपोन कर लेंगे, दिल्ली में तो शुरू कर देंगे। हमें कोई प्रशंसा नहीं मिली, हमें आलोचना मिली। गाड़ी बनाने वालों की थोड़ा तो चिंता रहती है, उनकी टोटल इंजीनियरिंग प्रोसेस को थोड़ा रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा, थोड़ा उनको पीछे करना पड़ेगा, उनको पहले से शुरू करना पड़ेगा। मित्रों, जो लोग ईवी के बारे में वकालत करते हैं, मैं उनके सामने एक उत्तर देता हूं। ईवी तो आएगा, हमें कोई अच्छा भी लगेगा, ईवी लाइट वेट होगा, ईवी एक्सेसिबल होगा। आज मैं चुनौती देता हूं, हमारे BS6 कोई भी टेक्नोलॉजी की प्लेटफॉर्म पे कोई भी मात्रा, उसकी नॉक्स, सॉक्स, उसकी PP ये सारे पैरामीटर्स में यूरो 6, BS6, जिसको हम दिल्ली की मार्केट में 2018 में ले आएंगे, जिसको देश में हमने 2 साल 2022 से प्रीपोन करके 2020 किया है, ये क्वालिटी में किसी भी प्रकार से कम नहीं है। मित्रों, हमारे लोगों को अफोर्डेबल एनर्जी चाहिए। मैं 2 दिन पहले पुणे के अंदर एक कार्यक्रम में था। पुणे हमारे देश की बायो इकोनॉमी की, बायो एग्री इकोनॉमी की एक बहुत बड़ा हब है। टेक्नोलॉजी और कन्वेंशनल एग्रीकल्चर की एक सही ब्लेंडिंग कहीं दिखने को मिलता है तो महाराष्ट्र की उस बेल्ट में मिलता है। शुगर इंडस्ट्री, अदर एग्रो इंडस्ट्री कैसे एनर्जी कन्वर्जन की ओर जा रहे हैं, इसकी एक बड़ा मिसाल है। मैं पुणे की एक स्टार्टअप कंपनी को दिखने के लिए गया था। नोवेल करके एक स्टार्टअप कंपनी है पुणे की। सल लिक्विड्स अर्बन वेस्ट से जो घर की बचा कुचा खाद्य पदार्थ है उसको इकट्ठा करके उसी से सीएनजी निकलना, उस सीएनजी की जितनी कॉस्ट होती है और सीएनजी की अवेलेबिलिटी जितनी होती है, पुणे शहर की साल भर की सारे बस उसमें से चल सकती है। भारत की एनर्जी रिक्वायरमेंट को भारत की अंदर से पूरा करना। विश्व में राजनीति बदल रही है। कभी किसी ने सोचा था सऊदी अरब और इजराइल दोनों मित्र बन सकते हैं? कभी किसी ने सोचा था कि चाइना, ईरान और रशिया एक क्लब बन सकता है? ये सब होने वाला है, हो रहा है। क्या भारत की मार्केट साइज को किसी भी देश, विश्व की कोई भी बड़ा अर्थनीति आज इग्नोर कर सकता है? मित्रों, नहीं कर सकता है। हमें भारत की इकोसिस्टम एक चीज की चुनौती लगती है कि इसको एक रोड मैप में कैसे लाएं, उसको ऐसे कैसे एक हम रोड मैप कैसे बनाएं। मैं अगर एक एक 5 मिनिस्ट्री गिनाया, 5 मिनिस्ट्री के बारे में आप लोगों ने थोड़ा थोड़ा चर्चा किया। विश्व सिनर्जी पाएगी अगर उसके पीछे पॉलिसी रिफॉर्म होगा। 2 साल 3 साल पहले कोयला सेक्टर की क्या हालत था देश में? हमारी इंपोर्ट बढ़ रही थी, हमारी इंपोर्ट बिल बढ़ रहा था कोयले में। आज ये नहीं कहूंगा कि कोयला की इंपोर्ट 0 हो गई है, लेकिन हमारी देश की सबसे ज्यादा, देश की आजादी के बाद सबसे ज्यादा कोल उत्पादन कब हुई है? तो इन दिनों में हुई है। आपने अरुण जी ने कहा कि सबसे ज्यादा बिजली उत्पादन कब हुई है? तो इन दिनों में बिजली उत्पादन हुई है। हमारी देश की ऑयल एंड गैस प्रोडक्शन जो लंबे समय तक एक स्टैग्नेंसी पे था, फिर अभी ब्लिंक करना शुरू किया है, वो थोड़ा पॉजिटिव साइन दिखा रही है, आगे जा रही है। मित्रों, हमने 1990 में जब इकोनॉमिक ओपन अप हुआ विश्व में, हम लोगों ने उस समय पे एनर्जी सेक्टर को खोलना शुरू किया। आफ्टर ऑल 90s से ही हाइड्रोकार्बन सेक्टर FDI एनेबल है। 2003 में हमने इलेक्ट्रिसिटी नया एक्ट लेके आया, लेकिन इसकी जो पिछले 20-25 साल की जो अनुभव रहा, उसको देखते हुए अभी की सरकार पावर में, कोल में, पेट्रोलियम में, रिन्यूएबल में, न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी में, पांचों की पांचों वर्टिकल में जो डिजायरेबल रिफॉर्म चाहिए, जो एक मार्केट सेंट्रिक मॉडल चाहिए, जो इन्वेस्टमेंट को सर्टेनिटी देगा, एश्योरेंस देगा, जो पॉलिसी में ट्रांसपेरेंसी, हमने मार्केटिंग फ्रीडम दिया है, प्राइसिंग फ्रीडम दिया है, ओपन एक्सेसिबिलिटी की बात तेजी से चल पड़ी है, मल्टी सोर्सिंग की बात चल पड़ी है, कॉस्ट ही एक प्राइमरी कंसर्न बनते जा रहा है। जब स्केल बनती है तो कॉस्ट घटती है। LED बल्ब उसकी सबसे बड़ा एग्जांपल है। रिन्यूएबल सोलर पावर की पर यूनिट टैरिफ उसकी सबसे बड़ा एग्जांपल है। मित्रों, सारे कंपटीशन इसीलिए हो पा रहे भारत की मार्केट साइज थ्रू कंटिन्यूस रिफॉर्म, थ्रू कंटिन्यूस ट्रांसपेरेंट रिफॉर्म, इसको हम अचीव कर सकते हैं। मित्रों, आज अभी हमने कहा कि भारत की गैस इकोनॉमी, भारत को गैस इकोनॉमी बनाना है। हमने लंबे अरसे के बाद भारत की गैस इकोनॉमी में कैपिटल स्पेंडिंग ट्रेजरी से शुरू हुई है। पहली बार भारत की इतिहास में ईस्टर्न सेक्टर में गैस ग्रिड बनाने के लिए सरकार पैसा खर्चा कर रही है ट्रेजरी से। बिल को VGF गैप देने के लिए सरकार ने बंद बनाई है। मित्रों, सरकार की पूरा स्पष्टता है, सरकार की प्रायोरिटी है। हमें अगर हमारी देश की 125 करोड़ देशवासियों को अपने पैर पे खड़ा करना है, उनको अगर अच्छी जिंदगी देना है, उनको अगर हाउसिंग देना है, उनको अगर रोजगारी की व्यवस्था देना है, उनको अगर सिंचाई की व्यवस्था करके देना है, उनकी अगर उसकी एग्री प्रोड्यूस को वैल्यू एडिशन करना है, उसकी सब के पीछे एनर्जी है। एनर्जी मल्टी सोर्स होनी चाहिए, एनर्जी अफोर्डेबल होनी चाहिए, एनर्जी सस्टेनेबल होनी चाहिए। मैं इस एनरिच से अपेक्षा करता हूं, आज आपने दिन भर कई विषयों पे चर्चा करना है। आप रिन्यूएबल पे चर्चा करेंगे, आप न्यू नॉर्मल्स के ऊपर चर्चा करेंगे, आप न्यू इन्वेस्टमेंट प्लान पे चर्चा करेंगे, आप विश्व की बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस के बारे में चर्चा करेंगे। मित्रों, ये चर्चा एकेडमिक ना रह जाए, इसलिए मैंने कहा आते ही कि ये आपकी रिकमेंडेशन ये 5 एनर्जी मिनिस्ट्री के सामने आनी चाहिए। और हमें ये चुनौती है, मैं इसको स्वीकार करता हूं कि सारे को कैसे एक अम्ब्रेला के अंदर पॉलिसी प्लेटफॉर्म पे लेके आए। अगर आज हम गैस बेस्ड इकोनॉमी के बारे में कहते हैं, NTPC वाले कहते हैं हम सस्ता बिजली कैसे बनाएं, बात सही है, लेकिन मित्रों ये डिबेट भी होनी चाहिए। क्या जो लोग हाई राइजर में बैठते हैं उनको भी जिस रेट पे बिजली मिलनी चाहिए, उस शहर में जो छोटा कंज्यूमर है उसको भी उतनी रेट में बिजली मिलनी चाहिए? दोनों की कोई फर्क नहीं होनी चाहिए? क्या वो हाई एंड कंज्यूमर गैस बेस्ड बिजली थोड़ा ही महंगा नहीं चला सकता है? क्या हमारी ये सारे कम से कम गैस तो GST के अंदर आ जानी चाहिए? ये विषय में आप लोगों की मदद चाहिए, डिबेट उसी पे हो। अगर कोयला को 5% GST है तो नेचुरल गैस जो सबसे उसे कई मात्रा में क्लीन है वो अभी GST की बाहर है। मेरे सारा विषय पे एनरिच इस पॉलिसी डोमेन में एनरिच करे। मैं तो अपेक्षा रखूंगा आज की डिलीबरेशन के बाद और आपकी इस प्रकार की इनिशिएटिव हर एक साल जो हो रही है, ये देश की एनर्जी प्रैक्टिशनर, एनर्जी पॉलिसी प्रैक्टिशनर के लिए एक बेंचमार्क बने, एक माइलस्टोन बने कि लोग अपेक्षा करें कि भाई KPMG की एनर्जी 18 क्या कह रहा है, कुछ नया आइडिया लेके आ रहे हैं क्या। और आप डराइए मत कि भाई फिर ये भी सब आ जाएगा और बाकी हमारी धंधा बंद हो जाएगा। और मैं आपके बारे में तो ये मजाक कहता हूं कि आप तो क्लाइंट बेस्ड हो। आप रिफाइनर के पास जाओगे, उसकी मैप कैसे अच्छा होगा उसको बता दोगे। फिर आप रिन्यूएबल सेक्टर में जाओगे, उसको कहोगे आपकी ग्रोथ कैसे डबल डिजिट पे होने वाला है, दीज आर द वे। फिर आप ऐसे ही कब जाओगे दूसरे सेक्टर में, तो आप ऐसे दूसरे कहानी कह के आओगे। आपकी सारे नोट को इकट्ठा करिए एनरिच में। और मैं मित्रों मानता हूं कि सबसे देखो तो विन विन सिचुएशन है। आपकी बिना प्रोजेक्ट रिपोर्ट बनेगी नहीं, आपकी बिना फाइनेंस नहीं हो सकती है, आपके बिना ऑडिटिंग भी पूरा नहीं होगी। मित्रों, मैं एक एनर्जी एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर के नाते मेरे मन में जो पिछले 2-3.5 साल की बेचैनी है कि हमने काम किया, अपने अपने वर्टिकल में काम किया, लेकिन देश की एनर्जी रोड मैप को 2040 तक हमारी क्या रिक्वायरमेंट है, हमारी रोड मैप क्या होगी, हमारी अफोर्डेबिलिटी क्या रहेगी, उसमें रोजगार निकलेगी। सौभाग्य योजना शुरू हुआ। मैं स्किल विभाग के मंत्री के नाते मैंने एनर्जी सेक्रेटरी साहब को बुलाया, हमारी स्किल सेक्रेटरी साहब दोनों को बिठाया। मैंने कहा कि देखो ये 16 का सीधा 40% है लेबर कंपोनेंट, वेजेस है, उसमें से 5,500-6 हजार करोड़ रुपया उसमें से वेजेस जाएगा और ये लगेगा आने वाले 12 महीने में, उसके आगे नहीं जाएगा। 12 महीने में क्वालिटी काम पूरा करने के लिए अच्छे वर्कमैन चाहिए। अच्छे वर्कमैन तब मिल पाएगा अगर उसको टाइमिंगली ओरिएंटेशन कर दिया जाएगा। अभी हम दोनों मिनिस्ट्री मिलके 200 जिलों में सबसे ज्यादा बिजली लगेगी। ये 4 करोड़ घर 200 देश की 200 जिले में है, 6 राज्य और 200 जिला प्राइमरीली। उन सारे इलाका में हमने शॉर्ट टर्म स्किलिंग इकोसिस्टम अभी अभी खड़ा करना है। मित्रों, ये सिनर्जी होती है रोड मैप की, ये वे अहेड बनता है, ये वे फॉरवर्ड बनता है। देश की रोजगार में ये कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री होगा। मित्रों, मैं इसी अपेक्षा के साथ आपको पुनः इस एनरिच 8th एनरिच 2017 हम सबको देश की एनर्जी डोमेन को एनरिच करे, इसी अपेक्षा के साथ आप सबका स्वागत करता हूं। धन्यवाद।
Honorable Minister Shri Pradhan ji, thank you very much. This was indeed very insightful and more importantly, very thought-provoking. We are extremely grateful to you for not only sharing your knowledge, but also your candid feedback on subject on an KPMG report. You mentioned, and very rightly mentioned, energy being the weapon of social economy transformation. And if we think for a moment that if we switch off all energy sources in the country, in the world, nothing will move forward. Probably all other sectors, be it education, be it IT, be it infrastructure, nothing will move if we do not have enough sources and right sources and clean sources of energy. So very rightly described, sir. Congratulations on adoption of BS6 norm for the transportation. I'm sure, BS6 norm leading to cleaner consumption to the level of CNG will also provide clean energy, whether it's coming from renewables or it's coming from diesel, will lead to the same result as we are looking for. You also mentioned about India's market size, and then certainly it is the strength which is leading us to be noticed in the world, which is leading us to become economic superpower, which is leading us to become important in this world. I mean, India represents almost 20% of the world as far as population is concerned. Suddenly, it is our strength. Moving from 6% energy consumption to 25% will certainly make India, as I said earlier, the energy capital of the world. So most importantly, your knowledge and passion, which was very well reflected in your talk today, I'm sure will lead this country to far, far, far development ahead of its time in as far as energy is concerned. I'm sure everyone in the room will be committed to support you in your initiative. Let me also tell you, KPMG is certainly committed to work in this sector and work with you, work with the country to take this country, as far as energy sector is concerned, into a different regime. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Akhil. Honorable Minister, I think the point very well made. I mean, I also sometimes wonder that within energy, the way, oil and gas, nuclear, I think we don't even talk, and we don't have an energy policy which really talks about over the next 20 years, what is the way to really go about utilizing every resource that India has an advantage with, rather than this debate which you hear, that coal versus renewable, which to my mind always surprise. As committed, KPMG will come out with the deliberations of the day, a paper which tries to converges all the viewpoints, conflicting viewpoints maybe, and try to put that across. I would also say, sir, we don't really have this client sort of a stuff. We have been raising some issues, and you will surely find this paper across. Everyone to release a point of views. We have prepared some point of views for the various subjects, which I think will generate this sort of a debate, and we are going to have sessions around that. Can I have copies, please? I think as my team sets the point of views, I will also like to highlight that something like this is not possible and taking a point of views on a different subjects and getting into details without active participation of a lot of our colleagues who have contributed here. I will just call out the names. I mean, I will request each of my colleague partners to stand up where they are. Anish Day, Manas Majumdar, Vikas Gaba, Santosh Kamath, Niladri, Gaurav, and Anvesha Thakkar. Can you just please stand up wherever you are? I think thanks a lot for helping on this point of views, please. Thank you very much. I will invite Mrityunjay, our Head of Markets and Sales, to give a vote of thanks to Honorable Minister for taking time out and also present him a token of appreciation from our side. Mrityunjay, please.
Thank you, Manish. Honorable Minister, sir, thank you. Thank you for gracing the occasion. And of course, your energy and passion was very evident. I would like to reiterate a few points you said. Energy is equal to empowerment. I think that was a very powerful statement that you did say. Affordable energy, market-centric model, and essentially improving the per capita consumption of energy in the country. I think all these elements are well ingrained in terms of what we would discuss today, and I'm sure they'll go into the policy development as you go through. I would also take this occasion to thank Arun, Akhil, Alberto, Manish and his team for organizing this fantastic event and the 8th edition, which essentially is, as the Minister said, is looking forward for your inputs into the kind of work that is happening in the ministry. Just touching back and going into some of the key points that were made, I think renewals remains an important element with 4-fold growth in the next few years and over 30% of the supply coming from renewables. Also, the other disruption that has come about, and you'll read more of it in our report, is that coal or solar has actually become cheaper than coal, and I think that is transformative in terms of the overall energy sector and how that moves forward. And as far as EV goes, that's a topic really transformational. BS6 is a great step forward, but by 2023, we do believe that the price of combustible engines is going to be higher than the electric engines. So actually the electric cars are set to be cheaper, and the vision set forth for 2030 could be a possibility of achievement. So with that, many thanks. Thank you all for being here. I hope you have a fruitful discussion and look forward to meeting all of you during the course of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Thanks for taking time out. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I will just request you to stay put. We have a coffee break after half an hour. Alberto, who heads our energy sector for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, is going to share his global perspective about this. So just please stay put here.
Can we have the presentation, please? So without wasting time, we'll begin this session. Let me invite Alberto Martin Rivals from KPMG Spain. Alberto is head of ENR for the EMA region, Europe, Middle East and Africa. He has a total 20 years of experience and has been working across trees on power and utilities, and has been seeing the trends of disruption live. So he will share his perspectives in the next 15 minutes. We leave about 10 minutes for question and answers. And I do believe that he will be here today. You will be interacting with him during the day. Alberto, over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. I would like to thank especially the Honorable Minister for being here today with us, and I would like also to thank you all for being here at our energy conference. The reality is that the entire world is looking at India in relation to energy. And why is that? You know, that some of the arguments were talked about this previously. At the end of the day, India will represent the one country with highest growth in energy coming 2 decades. And for that reason, the world cannot do its energy transition without India. But now let's look a little bit, you know, in a broader way, and let's look at what we expect in terms of the energy transition in the world. Can we have the presentation? So there are 4 topics I would like to touch in relation with this energy transition. The first of them is what are we really trying to solve? What are the energy challenges that the world is facing, and how are we set up, you know, to solve this in the coming years? Second is, what does that mean in terms of the changes in policies and in regulations that we should expect in this sector? I would also try to talk a little bit about technology and how technology can help us really overcome these challenges and be successful at that energy transition. And lastly, I would like to share with you also the results from our Global CEO survey, the Global CEO Outlook, and what energy CEOs are doing and are planning to do in terms of preparing their companies for that energy transition. So first of all, going to the energy, the world is facing 4 main challenges in terms of energy. The first one, of course, is global warming. We all know that global warming is probably the one biggest challenge for humanity in the coming years, but it's not the only one. We have other issues that are related to energy. One of them is, you know, in this city in particular, is air quality. Electricity access is also a big problem in the world. There's 1.1 billion people in the world with no access to electricity, most of them in sub-Saharan Africa. And there's another problem, which is affordability. And affordability is confused with access. And in fact, it's a different problem. Not only people should have access to the grid, but the energy that they're going to consume should be affordable. And it is not very well known, but in places like Europe, for example, 10% is they have to choose every month whether to heat homes or use that money to buy food. So really, affordability is a global topic that we should also address. Of course, we all know that there's new policies being set up, and there's been a big push following the COP21. So all including India, are announcing new measures to have a more sustainable energy sector. But are those measures enough? And a very good way to look at that is the latest release of the World Energy Outlook by the International Energy Agency, where they've been trying to model what does that mean, you know, in terms of all these new policies that are being set up, the ones announced at COP21, but recently also the ones announced by China, for example. What do they mean in terms of the future energy mix in the world? And you can see here the results, and they are very good news. One of the good news is that the world is going to be much more efficient in its use of energy. As you can see, in the next 2 decades, there's only going to be a 30% increase in the use of energy in the world. And at the same time, the world GDP is going to be multiplied by 2. So, 100% increase in GDP, only 30% increase in energy. That means that we're going to increase our energy efficiency by 70%, which is huge. You can also see that all of the increase in the consumption of energy is going to be covered by low emission sources. So renewables, but also gas. And that coal, with these policies that are being announced, is not going to grow, it's going to remain stable, and the oil is going to have only a very small increase in its consumption. So apparently good news, but is this enough? And unfortunately, the answer is no. If you look at that report and the results that you get at the end of these 23 years to 2040, you see that global CO2 emissions are not reduced, they continue growing, and they continue to accumulate in the atmosphere, and therefore the 2 degrees centigrade objective of the COP21 will not be met. You can see that the premature deaths from outdoor air pollution, that today are approximately 3 million people who die prematurely because of that problem is going to increase, and we'll get to 4 million per year in 2040. The population without access to electricity is going to be reduced, but still 23 years from now, we would have 670 million people with no access to electricity. And one interesting effect also is that if we keep on growing our oil consumption and taking into account the natural decline in the existing fields and in the new fields, including, for example, the shale oil fields in the US, the price of oil will likely begin increasing again, because we will have to reach out to more expensive sources of oil in the world. So therefore, the current policies are a great advance, but they will not solve the problem. Therefore, what should we expect, as people work in this sector in terms of policies? Well, the good news is that other policies are possible, and they're not that expensive. With only 15% additional investments, we could reach a much more sustainable scenario. And that would require, first of all, to increase energy efficiency even further. So not only increasing it by 70%, as was said, but increasing it by 100%. That would mean that we should be able to double the GDP in the world, basically with the same consumption. Push electrification. So electricity today is 19% of the demand. It should move to 30%. We should decarbonize even further the electricity sector, so getting 60% of electricity out of renewables and only 5% out of coal. And the difference is basically gas and nuclear. Electric vehicles should also be further developed. We don't need to get to the 100% penetration, because as we were hearing before, that's a difficult objective. That's 45% of electric vehicles in 2040. We could reach out the scenario you see on the right, and there you see that not only do we keep the total amount of energy consumed stable, but coal is very much reduced, and the consumption of oil also goes down. And with that, we could be able to, first of all, reduce global emissions and meet the 2 degrees centigrade target. But also, as you can see, we would limit the increase of oil prices, because we would be consuming less oil, and therefore we could use cheaper sources of oil. But also the problem of air pollution in the urban areas would be very much solved. And also the penetration of electricity in rural areas would benefit from this scenario, because we would invest more in distributed generation solutions, which are critical, to be able to electrify many of these populations. And this is a chart I really like, in terms of putting into perspective what the current policies that you are seeing in each moment, how those could change in the future. This is the solar PV targets that China has been set up across the years. As you can see, 10 years ago, China was projecting 10 gigawatts of solar by 2020. Today, their target is 200 gigawatts. So therefore, don't take for granted the policies that you see announced. Those policies could evolve in the future, and for sure they will go, to more sustainability and be, even braver in terms of solving the energy challenges and pushing and accelerating energy transition. Good news are related to technology. We really believe at KPMG, and there's a large consensus across the world, that technology is going to help in this energy transition. How can it help? Well, it helps in 4 ways. The first of all is it helps decarbonize. Decarbonization is possible basically because we have better technologies available, and in particular, the cost of renewables is going down. This is a very interesting chart where you can see the result of auctions for solar PV across the world in the last year. And there's a very, very clear trend that is related to technology, where you can see that in the last 7 years, the cost has been very rapidly. And this is linked, of course, to technology improvement. But what is also interesting to see is that in every single year in this chart, there's a huge difference in terms of the auction prices across countries. And that's what is really interesting. Technology is not enough. It's a combination of technology and good regulation that really allows to have access to cheap renewable energy. The countries that are in the bottom of that curve are countries that have been setting up auction systems that are particularly favorable to the investors. So those are auctions in hard currency, auctions that protect the investor in terms of, for example, the inflation risk. This kind of it's long-term auctions also, auctions where you have a guarantee for your investment in over 20-25 years. And with these type of auctions, we are getting to incredibly low prices. And actually, this chart is already out. As you can see, the lowest data point that we had there was an auction in Abu Dhabi from last year. There was an auction 2 weeks ago in Mexico. The resulting price was $20.6 per megawatt hour. The second thing that technology can do for us is help us decentralize. Decentralization is important because it helps achieve not just the first goal of decarbonization and helping in climate change. It also helps, for example, a lot in terms of electrification of rural areas. There, we are convinced that battery storage is going to be critical. And these are projections by IRENA, which has done a very detailed analysis of different storage technologies that are available. And as you can see, it is expected that by 2030, the cost of most of those technologies is going to be reduced by 60-70%. Not only the cost is going to improve, also the efficiency of those batteries is going to increase. One of the problems of batteries is when you store and you take the energy back, you lose a percentage of that energy. And that is also going to improve in the future thanks to technology. Technology can also help us digitalize this sector. And today, already many companies around the world are doing interesting, I wouldn't say it's already commercially developed initiatives related to digitalization. Digitalization can help in 3 ways. They help improve the customer journey. Things like more flexible payment schemes, things better information about outages, for example, about consumption. Technologies like recognition, to do better service in terms of call centers. All that is going with the experience that the client has when it relates to its energy provider. But it also helps the energy provider have a better relationship with the client, and in particular in areas with high energy losses, this type of technologies can help also tackle the problem, which is one of the problems we have with some of our clients. The second thing that digital helps do is develop new business models. If we want to develop rooftop solar, to develop electric vehicles, if we want to offer pricing schemes that incentive to customers to consume when the energy is cheap, we need digitally. And the third thing that is very important that we can do with this digital is reduce costs, also to help us offer more affordable energy to consumers. Things like using drones, using mobs for our field force, use predictive maintenance, applying Internet of Things and analytics, using smart grid systems, also going to reduce the cost of providing energy and increase efficiency. And the last thing that we can do with technology is increase electrification. And in this case, you can see, for example, our predictions or our scenarios in terms of electric vehicle penetration in the US. It is expected that by 2040, over half of the fleet in the US will be electric. But again, technology by itself is not enough. So in this case, is the combination of technology with new business models and in particular as a service that really going to enable this electrification of the mobility system in the US and in other countries. Now, what is happening in the industry actually? What are CEOs doing? And as I was mentioning, every year we do a survey to over 1,000 CEOs in the world. Out of around 10% of them typically work in the energy sector. So the results you're going to see come from approximately 100 CEOs in different countries that have responded to our survey. And the first message got from this survey is optimism. The CEOs in the energy sector are optimistic about the growth in their sector. They believe that energy transition is not a threat, it's an opportunity. And between 80 and 90% of them really see growth in their companies coming not only short term, but also medium term in the next 3-4 years. The second conclusion from the survey is that investments are on the table. There's a high appetite for investing in this sector, and investments are going to be focused on three main things. First of them is regulatory compliance. So that has to do in particular a lot with emissions, and not only CO2 emissions, but also other types of emissions. It's about, for example, the desulfurization, denitrification regulations that are coming into place in Europe for coal plants, and that are going to drive a lot of investment. It's things like reducing methane emissions and flaring in the oil and gas sector. It's this type of obligations that at the same time are going to be for investment. Second, there's going to be a lot of investment in physical infrastructure. In the case of power and utilities, that's basically two things, renewables and grids. In the case of oil and gas, it has a lot to do with gas. Actually, if you recall the charts we were seeing before, gas is going to take a more and more important role, and it requires a lot of investment in terms of LNG vessels, in terms of regasification plants, in terms of liquefaction plants in the coming decades. And the third area where investment is going to be focused is around innovation of new product and services to the final consumer. And there we have things like home automation, we have offerings like rooftop PV, distributed generation, electric mobility services also to the final client, and that's an area where all the energy companies are putting a lot of money. Third conclusion from this survey of the energy CEOs across the world is that digital transformation is not into question. I mean, they are all massively convinced about the benefits of digital transformation, and they plan to apply it in their companies. And that is particularly true, for example, for data and analytic tools. Almost 90% of the CEOs surveyed plan to use it extensively in their companies. Cognitive automation is also, a clear trend. Almost 80% of the CEOs interviewed are planning to apply things like robotic process automation, like machine learning, like cognitive technologies, and even artificial intelligence is something that is beginning to be used in the sector. And finally, Internet of Things, because it's not only about the back office of this company or the commercial side of it, it's actually digitalizing the field operations. So it's digitalizing the refineries, the electricity grids, etc. When we asked about the challenges that this digitalization means for them, then we got slightly different responses by subsector. So if you look at the responses from the utility sector, basically the CEOs are worried about how do I integrate those new technologies into my existing operations, because for them reliability is critical, and therefore being able to make it compatible, between the legacy technologies that they still have to use and the new technologies that are coming, that's the big question for them. It's things like integrating cognitive, is the optimal use of analytics, where should I apply it, where should I not apply it, that are really the question for them. For oil and gas, it's a bit different, because oil and gas, of course, is more threatened as a subsector than electricity, and therefore, what oil and gas CEOs are asking is, how can where's the money behind it? How is digital going to help me transform my business? And also, how is digital going to help me manage risks and get higher, or what we call organizational resilience, being able to confront these situations, by being much more flexible, and should help those companies do that. So those are basically the conclusions we got from our CEO survey. And if I had to summarize a little bit, our thoughts around this energy transition, I would just say that the world is facing tremendous challenges in terms of its use of energy, and that everything that has been done to date is very positive, but it's not enough. Therefore, I would advise everyone in the sector to consider that further policies and is going to create huge opportunities, because it's going to increase investment in the sector. But of course, you have to be careful in terms of where you put your bets, because probably the objectives of the governments are going to evolve in the coming years. Technology is going to help, but technology by itself is not enough. You should combine technology with good regulation and new business models. And finally, hurry up, because most of your competitors out there in the world are already preparing for this energy transition, and they're really beginning to apply these new technologies in their companies. And that's all I wanted to share with you. So I open it for questions if you have any questions that you would like me to address.
thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think I learned a lot just hearing from you about what is happening in Europe and across the world in this sector. My name is Mane Ranjan. I head the strategy function for Sterlite Power, which is the largest private transmission company in India. And I think what we're doing at Sterlite Power is changing the status quo in the transmission sector in many ways. And we strongly believe that something like this has not been attempted in the transmission sector globally in many ways. So I wanted to hear from you about your experience working with or discussing with transmission companies in general, because I think this is a sector that is not talked about a lot in enabling a future energy scenario, which is really critical because of the changing footprints and the way renewables are intermittent and all that. A very strong transmission sector, which is innovative and transformative, is absolutely critical to attaining this. So wanted to hear your perspective on how do you see that side of the picture.
Okay, thank you, because that's an excellent question. Actually, many people think simplistically, and we see that sometimes in the media, that more renewables means less need for grids. And actually, it's exactly the opposite. So because of the intermittent nature of renewables, actually, the more renewables you have in the system, the more of distribution sometimes you need. And that's something that, for example, we are facing in Europe. So Europe, as you know, is pushing for a very ambitious agenda in terms of renewables penetration. And because storage technologies are still not there, and probably it's not before 2030 where they will really become competitive against grids, we need to reinforce grids. So therefore, transmission in particular is something that is becoming very important. And the second thing that I would like to stress is that the intelligence you need to have built within the networks has to increase. So all the IT sophistication that you need in a grid is going only to increase because of this higher penetration of renewables. The country I come from, Spain in particular, was a pioneer in terms of developing renewables. Renewables today account for 40% of electricity production, and one of the problems we had, in particular when we installed large amounts of wind, onshore wind power, was precisely being able to have a stable grid and a stable transmission system with such a high penetration of renewables. And there it's a lot of investment in IT system, in predictive systems, in being able 1 week ahead to really assess how much production we're going to have at a particular moment. That is really helping us manage such a high penetration of renewables. So definitely the transmission sector is going to play a very important role in this energy transition.
Hello. Buenos dias. Good morning. My name is Manoj Agarwal. I work for Lenco, which is a power utility company. My details. In India, we are, of course, having an ambitious plan for 2030, all 100%. But let's assume even we have a success of 50%. So that requires two important things. One is the network of the charging station, and second one is the regulatory framework, whether we are selling electricity or consuming electricity, because that has to be, are we considered as a discoms, for example? So my question to you is, what are your thoughts on these two issues?
Okay. That's also an excellent question, because the experience we get from countries with high penetration of electric vehicles is that the charging infrastructure is probably the most critical factor. So you all know that Norway, for example, is probably the country in the world with the highest penetration of electric vehicles. But few people know the reason why. And the reason why is that it's a country where it's so cold that cars need to be heated. The regular cars need to be heated before you start them in the winter. And therefore there's a wide network of charging points. It's not actually charging points, it's just plugs that were used in the winter to heat up your car in order to be able to start it up. And it's those charging points that are being used today to charge the electric vehicles. And for that reason, people are willing to buy electric vehicles because they know they have many places where they can connect their vehicles to get charged. And that is just an example on how important developing the electric grid is to be able to really be successful in EV charging. And therefore, I fully agree with you. It's something that has to be thought about, and definitely the regulatory incentives to do that are critical. Some countries have tried to a completely liberalized system by which, if you want to install a charging point, go for it, and you will have to get paid by the clients you get. The problem is it gets into a vicious circle because you don't have clients, so people don't invest in the charging poles, and since there are no charging poles, people don't want to buy electric cars, and it gets like a vicious circle. So having good regulation about it is something that can really help. One more. I'm sorry. Was first, and sorry if I'm mistaking the order.
Alberto, a great presentation you made, and it was a good information regarding the global renewable and other source of energy. My question is, we know that the solar panel prices are drastically coming. I feel sometimes, to the slide you have shown that France is the country where the solar panels were sold at the highest price, and India was somewhere in between. So this is my question to you. Comparing only solar panel price with the inverter and some more auxiliaries with the coal-fired power plant, is it the right comparison? This is part one of my question. And is there any data available where the comparison is made with the battery storage? So battery storage with the solar panel probably is the right comparison with the coal-fired tariff. So this is my two questions, if you can answer it.
That's a very important remark. A power station, be it solar, coal, nuclear, whatever technology, in fact, delivers two services, two products to the market. One is energy, and the other one is capacity. What is important to understand is that renewables typically only provide the first. They provide the capacity security you have when you have a manageable power station. And therefore, when all the comparisons are done in terms of just the energy part, but they're not comparing the security of supply that plant is providing. And you want to a renewable installation with just batteries to provide for that security, the comparison today is clearly it's not competitive. If you add the two things. Therefore, you should consider the value of capacity and the value of the security of supply that the plant is providing when you compare the different technologies. And that value is different by markets. So, for example, countries with a high hydro capacity, there probably the value of that flexibility is lower. But countries which have a high overcapacity of all there, the value of capacity is lower. But countries that have a problem in keeping up with a peak demand should consider also not just the value of energy, but the value of capacity. And therefore the comparison should be done, in a more sophisticated way than what you can see in this type of charts. Fully agree with you. Okay, sorry we don't have more time, and but I'll be around and very happy to speak to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alberto. It was a pleasure to have you here. We'll have a short 15-minute tea break, and we'll resume in the same room after that. Thank you.